All right, welcome in everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today we are headed to Iran to learn about marriage traditions there.
Oh, cool. Iran.
Yeah, should be pretty interesting. And maybe a little different from what we're used to. So
Definitely, yeah.
we are going off of this YouTube video by a creator named Nars from Mars.
Okay.
And she is Iranian. So, getting it right from the source.
Nice.
But I was reading through some of this stuff in preparation, and even just the idea of dating is completely different over there.
Oh, really? In what way?
Well, apparently it's illegal. Casual dating is illegal in Iran.
Whoa, illegal. I mean, I know that, arranged marriages and things like that are a lot more common in that part of the world, but straight
Yeah.
up illegal to date, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, so what does that even mean? Like, you can't go out to dinner with someone you're interested in.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I don't, you can't go out at all.
Right.
But anything beyond that, like holding hands or showing affection publicly, you could get in trouble. Nars for Mars even mentioned, the police could come up and question you.
Oh,
And
wow.
even call your families to verify that you were in a relationship.
Geez, so even just going on a first date, there has a lot more baggage.
Yeah, for sure.
So then how do people meet if you can't even date?
So apparently there is this custom called hostagari. And it's kind of like, okay, imagine instead of meeting up for a date,
Right.
your families meet up to interview each other.
What?
Yeah. So both families meet up and decide if they think their kids would be a good match.
Oh my gosh, that's intense.
It's kind of funny to think about it.
Yeah.
What if my mom had to meet your mom before we could even,
I know, seriously. It's basically a job interview,
Totally.
but for marriage.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
So, okay, so let's say the families like each other. What's next? Do you just go straight to a wedding?
Not quite. There is still another step. It's called, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Namsa D. And this is more like a public declaration that you are committed.
Okay.
So you are together,
Right.
but it's not legally binding.
Interesting.
But apparently, even though it's not official, breaking things off at this point is really hard.
Why is that?
Just because of the social pressure. I mean, you've already gotten both families' approval, made it public,
Yeah, so it's like everyone expects you to get married at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. It seems like in Iran, it's really not just about the couple, the whole family and community is involved.
It's really interesting to see how different cultures approach this.
For sure.
So, okay, let's say you do get past the Namsa D thing. Is that when it becomes like an actual marriage?
Right. That's when you move on to the ag, which
Yeah.
is what makes the marriage official in Islam.
Okay, so tell me more about that, the ag.
Well, during the ag, a religious official recites verses from the Quran and stuff, and they sign papers, the legal stuff.
Right.
But get this, once you sign the papers, you are added to each other's birth certificates as spouses.
Oh, wow, right away.
Yep, right away, even though you might not actually be living together yet.
Wait, hold on. You are legally married, but you don't live together.
Right, it's kind of this weird in-between phase.
It really is.
I mean, I guess it's like a slower transition into marriage.
I guess so, yeah. It's so different from what we're used to.
Definitely. And actually, speaking of being different, Nars from Mars brought up something that honestly hadn't even crossed my mind, like virginity and the whole waiting until marriage thing.
Right.
That can make things really complicated if the couple doesn't work out.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that either. That's a good point.
Yeah, in the West, it's not really a big deal if people,
Aren't virgins when they get married?
Exactly. But it sounds like it's still a very important thing in Iran.
So we've got this picture of marriage in Iran being really complicated.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot more to it than just saying, I do. So what happens after this ad stage? Is that when you finally get to the wedding party?
Well, almost. Before the party, there's this whole thing about a dowry.
Oh, yeah, dowry.
And Nars for Mars made it sound like it's a pretty big deal.
Like, what kind of stuff are we talking?
It's not just like a symbolic gift or anything. We're talking furniture, appliances, basically everything you need to set up a house.
Wow, so the bride's family has to provide all of that.
That's what it sounded like, yeah.
Man, that's got to be expensive.
Yeah, and a lot of work, too, just getting all that stuff together.
I guess really shows how much the families are involved in the whole marriage process over there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like their whole lives are getting kind of intertwined,
It's really fascinating to see just how differently things are done in other parts of the world.
Yeah, it makes you think, huh?
It's wild, right? Like, all of that happens even before they have a wedding.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you think, is the wedding even a big deal at that point?
Good question, because Nars from Mars didn't actually talk too much about the party itself.
Really?
Yeah, she mostly focused on all the steps leading up to it.
Huh. So maybe it's more like a formality.
Yeah, maybe. Like after everything else, the party's just the cherry on top.
Makes sense, yeah.
So thinking about all these traditions, what was Nars from Mars's take? Like, did she think they were good things, or was she more critical?
She was definitely critical, yeah.
What did she say?
Well, her main point was these traditions are kind of illogical.
Mm.
And she even blamed them for Iran's high divorce rate.
Oh, wow. How so?
Well, she said that forcing people to get married based on what their families want
Mm.
instead of, actual love,
Yeah.
that's just setting couples up to fail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't really know the person you are marrying,
Right.
you are probably more likely to end up getting divorced.
Exactly. And it made me wonder, like, are her views common in Iran?
Yeah, good question.
Especially among younger people,
Right, because they probably want more freedom in choosing who to marry.
Exactly. Like maybe they don't want their parents to pick for them.
So it's like a clash between the old ways and the new ways.
Yeah, I think so. It seems like Iranian society is kind of going through a lot of changes.
Yeah, well, it's like that everywhere in the world, I think.
True, yeah. Things are always changing.
Right. But even though we're just looking at Iran today, what can we learn from this? Like, what are the big ideas here?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is just how much culture shapes our ideas about love and marriage.
Yeah.
Like what we consider normal.
Yeah.
It might be totally different in another part of the world.
It's like we're all looking through different lenses, you know?
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to be aware of that.
Yeah, to try and see things from other people's perspectives.
Right, because it helps us understand each other better.
Definitely. So, yeah, we've talked a lot about Iranian marriage traditions today,
Yeah, it's been interesting.
but it's just one part of a much bigger picture, you know? Like, Iran has such a rich history and culture.
It does,
So
yeah.
this is really just scratching the surface.
Definitely.
But hopefully it's inspired some of our listeners to learn more.
Yeah, maybe even visit Iran someday.
Yeah, why not?
It would be pretty cool to see all this stuff in person.
Absolutely. So, like, what about you? How do you think your own culture has shaped your view of relationships?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah, no worries. It's something for everyone to think about.
It is, yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course, it's been fun.
Before we go, any last thoughts for the listeners out there?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that cultures are always evolving. Like what we see in Iran today, it might be different in a few years.
Some things change. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting, I think.
So it's not just about learning the facts. It's about staying open to new ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Because you never know what you might discover.
It's like your cultures aren't these fixed things you can just, read about in a book.
Right. They're living, breathing, always changing.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I think that's true for, like, everything, not just culture.
Totally. The world's always changing.
So being open to those changes, to new ideas,
Yeah.
that's what's really important.
I agree. That's how we learn and grow, right?
100%. Well, on that note, I think we've done a pretty good job of diving deep into Iranian marriage traditions today.
Yeah, I think so.
So thank you for joining us on this journey. Hopefully it's been as interesting for you as it has been for me.
It really has. Yeah.
And remember, like we were saying before, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. There's so much more to learn.
So if you are curious, keep digging. I mean, Nars from Mars's video is a great starting point.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
But there are tons of other resources out
Oh,
there.
yeah. Books, articles, documentaries, you name it.
Exactly. So keep that curiosity alive and keep exploring. We'll catch you in the next deep dive.
See ya!